I started with this is I started kind of just kind of trying to do a little background about what the world was like when Jesus was born, about what kind of world he was brought into. And all of the things I was discovering just reminded me of the day that we live in right now. This crazy kind of worldliness that engulfs us is just, it's not new. It's just not new. And it's just always been. I want to read the last few verses of chapter 8 before I go on. I want you to this is just sort of a description. Chapter 8, verse 19, it says, "When they say to you, seek those who are mediums and wizards and who whisper and mutter, should not a people seek their God? Should they seek the dead on behalf of the living? To the law and to the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. They will pass through it hard-pressed and hungry, and it'll happen when they are hungry that they will be enraged, and they'll curse their king and their God, and look upward, and then they will look to the earth and see trouble and darkness, gloom of anguish, and they will be driven into the darkness." You know, see, here's kind of what happens to us. This is kind of a pattern that I see happening here. The first thing that we do is we just compromise the Word of God. You know, and in some ways we're probably all a little bit guilty of this. I hope we're not, but in a lot of ways we are. You know, and what we do is we let our experiences, we let what we experience in life dictate what we think the Bible means when it says certain things. And I don't know how to really say this, but you know, maybe in life, in my own personal life, or maybe somewhere in my family, there are things that are going on that are completely against what God's Word says. Instead of me just saying that God's Word is the truth, I want to then twist it up a little bit, maybe discredit some of it, because I don't want it to make me feel bad, and I certainly don't want it to make someone in my family feel bad. So it just begins this little compromise of the Word of God, and we don't just allow it to be truth. And so then, as things begin to happen to us in this life, the light is gone because we don't have the truth. The truth is whatever I feel is good. The truth is whatever we think makes us happy, or the truth is whatever we think will make for a better world. The truth is whatever we think will not hurt other people. You know, we've compromised this truth, so the light doesn't live inside of us. And so because there's no light in us, then we start having all these struggles, and we start having these hard times. Not because there's no light in us. That's just part of life. Struggles and hardships and trials and tribulations. But because there's no light in us, when all of these things happen, well, then suddenly we want to blame it on God. And then suddenly we get mad at God. We get angry with God. And we blame Him, and we curse our God. And then we start looking around in the world, and all we see is trouble and darkness and gloom of anguish. And we just end up going deeper and deeper and deeper into this darkness. And that's what those last 4 verses of Isaiah chapter 8 say in my mind. And you know, the truth is, and the word gloom, that word gloom it just kept popping out at me every time I read this passage. Because, you know, life can be dark. Life can be hard. Life is certainly not fair. And life touches every single person that lives. If there's one thing I've learned since being in the ministry, everybody has a story. And I mean everybody has a story. What I mean by that is everybody has a story of heartbreak. And everybody has a story of sadness. Everybody has a story of tragedy. Everybody has a story where life has reached into their deepest part of their heart and has touched them in a negative way. It really does. And It's just tough. Now, we put on a good face at Christmas. Actually, we probably put on a good face most of the time. But we especially do at Christmas because it's all about peace and love. And I mean, a little baby, come on. How can you be sad and dark and gloomy when you're talking about a little baby? I'm reminded of from the book of Ruth, the story of Naomi, the part about Naomi. Now, Naomi isn't the main character of the book, but Naomi had a husband and 2 sons, and they lived in Bethlehem. And there was a great famine that came to Bethlehem, and so they fled to the country of Moab, which was not just another country for them, but it was actually a despised country for them. It was a country that they didn't even like. While she was there in a foreign land, her husband and both of her sons died. And she came back to Bethlehem. And when she came back, in Ruth chapter 1, in verse 19, it says the 2 of them, she's talking about Naomi and Ruth, was her daughter-in-law. The 2 of them went until they came to Bethlehem. And it happened that when they had come to Bethlehem, that all the city was excited because of them. And the women said, "This is Naomi. Here's Naomi. Naomi's back." Now, I want you to understand that the name Naomi means pleasant. And she says to them, "Do not call me Naomi." She says, "Call me Mara." Mara means bitter. She said, "Don't call me pleasant anymore." She said, "Call me bitter." Listen, because the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went out full, but the Lord has brought me home again empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has afflicted me? You know, we can live through this life, and we can live through the darknesses of this life and the trials and the tragedies and just the hardship and the heartbreak, and we can start feeling like Naomi, and you know that somehow it's God who's against me. It's God that is afflicting me. It's actually God that's against me. It's actually God that's causing all this destruction in my heart, in my mind, in my soul, and in my spirit. And we can become very bitter, and we can say, you know, and just almost relish in it. She said, don't even call me pleasant anymore. Call me bitter, because that's who I am. That's who God has made me. That's what God has produced and shaped me into. Well, at the very end of the book, Naomi is changed because of a little bitty baby. In Ruth chapter 4, I'm going to start at verse 13. Now, Naomi's daughter-in-law, but the son had died, was Ruth. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bore a son. And then the women said to Naomi, "Blessed be the Lord, who has not left you this day without a close relative, and may his name be famous in Israel." In verse 15, "May he be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you is better to you than 7 sons. Then 7 sons has borne him." Then Naomi took the child, laid him on her bosom, and became a nurse to him. This little baby, let me go ahead and read the rest of it, just so you'll know. Also the neighbor women gave him a name, saying, "There is a son born to Naomi, and they'll call his name Obed. And he was the father of Jesse, and he was the father of David." A restorer of life to her. This little baby somehow was able to come into her life and into her heart and be a part of her soul in such a way that it took away the bitterness, and it took away the anger, and it took away all of this feeling of how God was just against her and how God was afflicting her. This little bitty baby did that. And in case you're wondering, this little bitty baby, father of Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of King David. He's in the line of Jesus. A little baby born in Bethlehem that takes away the bitterness, restores some joy to a woman's life. If that's not the story of Christmas, then I don't know what is. But can a baby do that? Back over in Isaiah. Can a little baby do that? Can a little baby shine some light into your darkness? Verses 1 and 2 in chapter 9. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed. And I'm going to skip down to verse 2. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light, and those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a great light has shined. You know, our world and really our culture, there are so many people that are living in a great, and I'm going to call it a spiritual darkness, but listen, it's more than that. It is an emotional darkness. There is a gloom and a spirit of gloom and darkness that just envelopes people's lives. There are so many people in our culture who struggle. Some people all of the time. Some people just go through periods of this great, dark, depressive emotions that come upon our soul and come upon our spirit. And it's a darkness that just saps the life out of us. And it really just makes us feel so empty, and it makes us feel like nothing. And it just makes us not even feel like life has any kind of a meaning. And can a little baby shine some light into that darkness? It can if it's the right one. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. And in Luke chapter 2, when the angel appeared to the shepherds out in the field, it said that the glory of the Lord shone around them. The glory of the Lord, the glory of God, was a bright light that just shone all around them and just was everywhere around them. It was the glory of God, and true light is seen in the glory of God. The right baby can shine this light into our lives. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 5, it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the same was in the beginning with Him, and all things were made by Him, and without Him there was not anything made that was made. And in Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shined in the darkness, and the darkness could not overcome it." Let me tell you, when the light of that baby that was born in Bethlehem shines into the deepest, darkest life and soul and spirit, the darkness cannot overcome that light. It cannot. Do you need some light in your life? Do you struggle with this daily? Listen, I'm telling you, and you may still on some level struggle with it, but I'm telling you what, the only answer to this gloom and this darkness is a complete surrender and a giving of our lives and allowing the light of Christ to shine into our souls. It's the only answer. Whether you just go through it in periods, whether you live with it daily, whether you just had one spot, I'm telling you, can a baby change that? The right one can. Can a baby really give you some joy? Verse 3 of chapter 9 in Isaiah. "You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of the harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil." And what he's saying here is, he said, you've given them a joy like they would have if they have the best harvest they ever had. You are giving them a joy like soldiers coming home and dividing the spoil and, splitting up the booty. I mean, he says you are giving. He was just trying to give some examples, but the issue is that God, by shining that light into that darkness, is able to produce in them an exceedingly great joy. Listen, joy is more than just being happy. I guess they're synonyms. Synonyms. I think I said synonym. No, I guess they're synonyms, but in a way they are, but in a way they're not. Joy is bigger than being happy. Joy is something that's deep down inside. Happiness really depends upon the circumstance. The thing that's happening makes me happy or not. But joy is a contentment. It's a peace that is deep in the soul and deep in the spirit. That even when things that don't make me happy are encompassing me, that I can still find this joy because it's deep inside of me. It's a contentment. It's a peace. It comes from knowing that I belong to God and that whatever happens to me has passed through His hands, as much as I hate to say that. But that God is in control. He is in control of all things. He is in control of my life. He is in control of what happens to me. And ultimately, He is working out His good will and His purposes. And while I may not understand them, and I may not even like what's going on at the moment, it may hurt terribly, somewhere deep inside of me, I know that God is at work and God is doing what God needs to do. For me, and for this world, and for His kingdom. You cannot manufacture joy. I want you to know that. You can't make joy happen. You can have the greatest circumstances of life. You can be very happy at the moment outwardly, but inside have completely no joy. You see, joy is a fruit of the Spirit. The joy only comes when the Spirit of God lives inside of us. It only comes when we have given our lives to that little baby that was born in Bethlehem thousands of years ago. He's the only one that can produce that joy. You remember the wise men when they were looking for Jesus? They went to Herod. Of course, Herod wanted to kill the baby. I mean, he thought it was a king. He thought it was an earthly king, going to be a rival to his kingdom. And after they talked to Herod, they went back out and they saw the star again. And it says that they rejoiced with an exceeding great joy. Apparently, they were afraid they had missed it. These men, we call them kings, we call them wise men. The word in the New Testament is magi. They were some sort of philosophers, astrologers. They obviously were the kind of people who were looking for meaning in life. They were the kind of people who were trying to make some kind of sense out of life. And somehow they knew and they sensed. The Bible doesn't tell us how they knew, but somehow they knew and they sensed and they knew that in following this star, they were going to come to finding exactly what it is that they had been searching for all of their lives and had committed their lives to searching for. I'm sure when they talked to Herod and they realized what Herod was up to, I'm sure they were scared and disappointed. But when they saw that star again, they rejoiced with an exceeding great joy. Because they were going to find the meaning of life. You see, meaninglessness, that's where a lack of joy comes from. If I just feel like my whole life is just intended for me to just scratch through it, like most of us do, and just try to be the best dad and husband that we can be, and then one day we're just going to be gone. If that's all there is to life, that is a joyless existence. It is a meaningless existence. It is a purposeless existence. Can a baby really change that and put some joy into our lives? The right one can. Can a baby break the burdens that life puts upon us? Look, life is like pulling a big old heavy load up a mountain and getting to the top, and there's another mountain. And we're just always pulling, and we're just always struggling, and we're always fighting, and we're always just digging in to move. And the burden, it really never seems to lighten up, right? I mean, and we get to a place in life where we think, oh, it's going to get a little easier now. And it doesn't, because there's something else. You know, once the financial burdens go away because the kids are gone, well, then the health burdens start piling on, right? You know, I mean, it's just always something. And then our burdens are for our kids as they're experiencing life, you know, the way we had to, and we hurt for them, and and it's just a big burden. Verse 4 says that you have broken the yoke of his burden, the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor. A baby can break the yoke of that burden, and the yoke is the thing they put around the oxen so that they could plow and pull the plow. It was sort of that big harness thing that they put around their necks or their shoulders, and it made them pull. It was a symbol of being a burden. Can a baby release us and break the burdens, the yoke of the burdens of this life? He can if he's the one that grew up and said in Matthew 11:28 and 29, I need to start on that. Come to me. There you go. You know how sometimes you just got to have to start on it. The one that said, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle, lowly at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. You see, we often look at Christianity and look at living for Christ as actually being a heavier burden than life. But the truth is, and the reality is, that when we take the burden of Christ upon our lives and we decide that we're going to live for Him completely and totally, and we're going to be yoked up to His kingdom and to His life, the truth is that that burden is much lighter. There are always two oxen. The difference is, in the yoke with us is that baby. That baby that was born in Bethlehem. It's the Spirit of God. It's Christ, the Spirit of Christ, the one who lives inside of us. Same life. Life is the same. I mean, in some ways your life will change, but life is still going to be hard. Life is still going to have its challenges. Life is still going to be not fair. But you know what? You're going to have a different outlook. And you're going to have a different person carrying the weight with you. It's not going to be just you all alone. Can a baby do that? The right one can. Can a baby give you some victory? Verse 5, every warrior's sandal from the noisy battle and garments rolled in blood will be used for the burning of fire. And it's just a picture of the soldiers who have been victorious and they've come home and they don't have to battle anymore. I mean, can a baby really give you victory over all the things that plague you, all of the things that strain you, all of the things that you fall victim to spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and physically in this life? Can a baby really give us victory over that? What's the answer? The right one can. The right one can. Merry Christmas. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given. This is the next verse, by the way, in Isaiah chapter 9, in case you're wondering. Can these things be done? Can light be shined in our darkness? Can joy be given? Can the yoke of the burdens of life be broken? Can we be given victory? Yes, for unto us, because unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice from that time forward, even forever. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform it. Yes, the right baby can do all of those things because he is the wonderful counselor. He is the comforter. He is the helper. He is the one that comes alongside of us. He is the one who knows how to give comfort. He's the one that knows your heart, your mind, and God's heart and God's mind. He is the perfect mediator between you and God. Yes, wonderful counselor. He is the mighty God. He is the one that can do whatever he wants. I mean, let's face it. In nature, in life, in the world, God can literally do whatever he wants. He spoke and the world came into creation. He said, "Let there be light," and there was light. He spoke by the spoken word and divided the land from the water. He spoke and suddenly there were plants. He spoke and suddenly there were animals. He reached down and grabbed a handful of dirt and created a human being and then breathed his breath into them to make them a living soul and a living being. He is the mighty God. He can I gave you that one illustration that one time in Isaiah where time went backwards, where the sun went backwards. He literally took the entire universe and turned it backwards. That's literally what had to happen. To take everything, every planet, every star, every part of the universe, and literally turn it backwards. Because we know the sun doesn't move, right? I mean, you know that, right? You know the sun's not moving, right? Okay. I just want to make sure y'all knew that. It wasn't like he just moved the sun. Everything else is moving around the sun. He had to move everything else backwards. He had to keep the moon in the right place for the tides and all. And I'm kind of chasing a little squirrel here, but he is the mighty God. And he can do anything. And there is nothing that you have in your life right now that he can't fix in a second. Now, am I saying he's going to? He may not. He may, but he may not. But again, if not, he's the wonderful counselor. He knows how to walk with you through it. The mighty God, the everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. He is eternal. He is the only one that is eternal. He is the only one that has always existed and always will exist. He is the only one that will be there forever. He will be there forever in this life. He will be there forever in the next life. He is the only one that's everlasting. And the Prince of Peace. He's the only one that can truly give our hearts a peace so that we can walk through the struggles. The struggles of old age. Can I just say that? Because some of you know way better than I do. It's a heavy burden, isn't it? It's a heavy burden as you work through that and walk through that and have peace to face what you know, can I say it, is around the corner. We need peace for all of our life and for all of the trials and for all of the struggles. And only that child, capital C, only that son, capital S, who was given back there in Bethlehem can do all of those things. You know what? Merry Christmas. Stand up if you stand up if you would. Look, I don't know where you are in this life. I don't know what you're in right now. I don't know what you're going through, what you have been through. Here's what I do know. I do know that you'll handle it and face it and walk through it better with the light of Christ in your life. That's what I do know. Today could be the day that you need to surrender to Him. Maybe you just want to come and pray. Maybe you've given your life to Christ, but you've never really just let it go and just asked Him to take control. And maybe today you'd do that. I don't know where you are. I don't know what you need to do, but if you need to make any kind of decision this morning publicly, please come down and I'll pray with you while we sing.